Morning sunlight spilled into the small house in Portland, illuminating every dust particle drifting in the air. Jonah Whitlock slowly opened his eyes on the old sofa. His body ached after a restless night's sleep. Then a faint sound rose from the kitchen, the clink of a spoon against a cup. Soft footsteps. Jonah jerked upright. He turned his head, and his heart seemed to freeze mid-beat. A woman was standing in the kitchen, her hair slightly tousled, the early light wrapping around each soft strand. On her body was his white shirt, the very shirt he'd tossed over the chair last night. She was making coffee, her movements calm, as if she had belonged to this kitchen for a long time. She turned around. A thin smile flickered at the corner of her lips. "Do you really not remember anything from last night?" Jonah swallowed hard. His voice was hoarse, uneven. "Wait, who are you?" The woman set the coffee cup down on the table, slowly, as if savoring every bit of tension lingering in the room. "The woman whose life you saved," she said gently, like a breeze. "And also the owner of the company that currently holds this house." Jonah shot to his feet. The room seemed to spin for a second. His heart pounded hard, every vein throbbing at his temples. From the hallway came a burst of giggles. Tessa, his daughter, peeked her head out of the bedroom door. Her blue eyes sparkled with curiosity. The woman looked at Tessa, then back at Jonah. In her eyes was something both unfamiliar and dangerous, as if she were hiding a secret he hadn't yet touched. "We need to talk, Jonah. If you're wondering how all of this began, remember to hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. This story is only beginning to unfold. After all, what does the mysterious woman in Jonah's shirt truly want from him? And what she's about to say, could it change the entire life of the Whitlock father and daughter? Jonah Whitlock, 36 years old, a mechanical engineer who once worked for a major company in Seattle. Now he is just a freelance repairman in Portland, fixing leaking pipes, running electrical wiring for old houses. Any job that pays, he takes. His daughter, Tessa, 7 years old, eyes blue as a summer sky, blonde hair tied high behind her head. She is Jonah's entire universe. Even though life is always a struggle, Jonah still teaches her one thing. "Tessa, we may be poor, but we never give up. Understand?" She nodded. And strangely, Tessa understood life more than most children her age. But that night, that fateful night, began with a storm. Rain poured down on the streets of Portland. Thunder roared across the sky. Jonah drove his old truck home after a 12-hour shift. His shirt was soaked with sweat and engine oil, his hands trembling from exhaustion. The truck swayed on the flooded road. The headlights flickered in the thick curtain of rain. Then he saw it. A luxury car lay tilted on the roadside, its front end rammed into a tree. White smoke rose from the hood. Flickering headlights cast a faint beam of light, like a final cry for help. Jonah hit the brakes. The truck skidded across the slick road. He jumped out, running through the rain like charging into a wall of white. Inside the car was a woman, her black suit soaked through, her white shirt stained with blood. Her expensive watch still gleamed faintly beneath the flashes of lightning. Her face was pale, a streak of blood running from her forehead down her cheekbone. The seatbelt held her tightly in place. She saw Jonah, her eyes wide, terrified. "Help me, please." Jonah didn't think, didn't hesitate. He smashed the window with his elbow. The skin split, blood mixing with rainwater. He grabbed his pocket knife, cut the seatbelt, and pulled her out. Just seconds later, the engine burst into flames. The woman collapsed against his chest, her body trembling violently. "Thank you. I can't breathe." Her breaths were shallow, rapid, full of panic. The hospital was miles away. Half the city was cut off due to flooding. There was no route that would get them there in time. Jonah made a decision within a single heartbeat. My house is nearby. We need to get there now. She nodded weakly. He drove fast, but carefully, his hands still shaking. Through the fog of rain, his small house appeared. A worn wooden home with peeling paint and a crooked fence bracing itself against the storm. Inside, he laid her on the only bed in the house. He pulled a blanket over her and leaned down to check her breathing. She was unconscious, but stable. Jonah grabbed a pillow and headed to the sofa. That would be his place to sleep tonight. Around midnight, Tessa woke up. She quietly stepped into the living room and saw her father sitting upright, his tense eyes fixed on the bedroom door. "Daddy? Who is that woman?" "She's hurt, Tessa. She needs help." "Will she be okay?" "I think so. Go back to sleep." Tessa wrapped her arms tightly around him. "You're the best person in the world." "I'm just doing what I should, sweetheart." A bolt of lightning tore across the sky, a flash of white illuminating the woman's face through the crack of the door. And in that instant, Jonah saw something in her, something indefinable. Strength. Power. A quiet authority that made others hold their breath. This was not an ordinary person. Who was she? Dawn arrived slowly. The storm had retreated, as if it had never existed. Jonah made coffee, hot steam rising in the small kitchen. He leaned into the bedroom to check on the woman once more. She was still sound asleep. He looked around. The expensive suit hung over the chair to dry, the designer handbag placed in the corner, the platinum watch gleaming on the bedside table. This woman had money. A lot of money. But last night, none of that mattered. She had simply been someone who needed help. A sound came. She was waking up. Jonah stepped back, giving her space. He went to the kitchen and began preparing breakfast for Tessa. Then he heard footsteps. He turned around. His world seemed to stop. The woman stood at the doorway, wearing his white shirt, the one he'd left on the chair. Her hair was messy, but her eyes were sharp, alert, studying him. She smiled. Soft. Intentional. "Good morning." Jonah felt his face burn. "You are wearing my shirt. You left me lying in a pile of wet clothes. I found this." Her voice was calm, confident, even slightly amused. "I hope you don't mind?" Tessa came running in, her hair still tousled from sleep. "Who are you?" The woman crouched down to be at Tessa's eye level. "Just someone your dad saved." Jonah stood frozen. This woman, in his shirt, in his kitchen, was acting as if she had belonged here for years. "I can call a taxi for you," Jonah said, his voice tense, awkward. "No need. My driver is waiting outside." "Driver." She poured herself coffee and took a sip. "He's been waiting since 6 this morning." Jonah blinked. "You could have left hours ago." "I wanted to thank you properly." She set the cup down. "And return this." She pointed at the shirt. But she didn't move. She simply smiled. A smile that felt like she was testing how he would react. Tessa burst out laughing. Jonah looked at his daughter. "Tessa, go get ready for school." "But Dad—" "Right now." Tessa pouted, but headed back to her room. The woman watched their exchange. "She's adorable. How old is she?" 7. "You raise her alone?" "That has nothing to do with you." She raised an eyebrow. "That's true." A silence sliced through the air like cold wind. Jonah lowered his head, wiping the table, doing anything to avoid her gaze. Then she opened her handbag and took out a thick, soft leather wallet. She set a stack of cash on the table. $100 bills neatly arranged. At least 2,000. To cover last night. Jonah looked at the money, then at her. "Cover what?" "You saved my life. Gave me a bed, clothes, everything." Jonah's jaw tightened. "I didn't do it for money." She shrugged. "Then consider it laundry money. Your shirt probably needs dry cleaning." Something inside Jonah cracked. He grabbed the money and shoved it back toward her. "Take it. I don't need your money." Her face remained completely calm. Most men would take it. "I'm not most men." She tilted her head, studying him as if examining the structure of a strange machine. "No, you're not." She calmly took the money back, folded it neatly, and slipped it into her bag. "My mistake. I thought I was being generous." "Generous?" Jonah let out a cold, bitter laugh. "You think throwing money around is generosity? You don't know what generosity is? Then explain it to me." Generosity is helping someone because it's the right thing to do, not because of debt, not because of money, just because they need it. She stood still. For the first time, a flicker of confusion crossed her usually composed face. "I understand," she said softly. "Do you, really?" Jonah turned away. "Because from what I've seen, you just tried to turn a kind act into a transaction." The air between them grew as heavy as stone. Finally, her voice lowered. "You're right. I'm sorry." Jonah didn't look at her. She walked to the door, paused, and glanced back. "What's your name?" "Jonah. Jonah Whitlock." "Jonah Whitlock." She repeated it slowly. "I won't forget." Then she left. The door closed gently behind her. Tessa peeked out with her backpack on. "Is that Daddy's girlfriend?" "No, sweetheart. She's complicated." "I think she likes you." Jonah laughed. "Oh, yeah? Why?" "Because she looked at you the way you look at pancakes." Jonah threw his head back, laughing. "Like I want to eat her? Like she makes you happy." Jonah scooped his daughter into his arms, lifting her up and spinning her once. "You're too smart for your own good." That afternoon, Jonah picked Tessa up from school. They stopped at a small grocery store. He counted the money carefully. Enough to buy rice, eggs, vegetables, maybe a small treat for Tessa if he calculated well. At home, he turned on the TV while cooking. Then he heard it. Breaking news. CEO Aubrey Hawthorne, who survived a car accident last night, returned to work today. Sources say a local resident pulled her from a burning vehicle just in time. Jonah froze. He stared at the screen. It was her, the woman from that morning, now appearing with a commanding presence in a sharp business suit, standing in front of an imposing headquarters building. Behind her was the large logo, Hawthorne Industries. The reporter continued. Ms. Hawthorne declined to name her rescuer, but she did say this. The screen shifted to Aubrey. Microphones pointed at her, flashes firing nonstop. He was kind, humble, and refused to take any money. That is the kind of dignity that cannot be bought. Jonah stood there, wooden spoon in hand, mouth hanging open. Tessa tugged lightly on his sleeve. "Daddy, that's the woman from this morning." "Yeah, sweetie, it is. She's famous. Looks like it. Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't know either." Tessa's eyes widened. "Dad saved a CEO. That's so cool." Jonah turned off the TV and went back to cooking, but his head was spinning. Aubrey Hawthorne, one of the wealthiest women in Oregon. Known for buying companies, building an empire, crushing competitors. Tessa climbed onto the chair by the counter. "Do you think she'll come back?" "I don't think so, sweetheart." Then he sighed. "But I also hope she does." "I like her," Tessa said matter-of-factly. Jonah patted his daughter's head. Her soft blonde hair fell over his hand. "You like everyone." "Not everyone," Tessa shook her head. "Only the good ones. And she seems good, even though she looks very fancy." Jonah gave a faint smile. His daughter always had a way of seeing the good in others, even when the world had wrapped them in its coldest shell. Maybe Tessa was right. Maybe underneath that cold, powerful CEO exterior, Aubrey was kind in her own way. But Jonah told himself he would never know that. People like her wouldn't come back to a working-class neighborhood like his. That door had closed already. Or, at least, that's what he thought. 3 days passed. Jonah tried to forget Aubrey Hawthorne. He had work to do, bills to pay, a daughter to raise. But the universe had other plans. He was at Tessa's school, fixing a broken water pipe in the teacher's lounge. His hands were dirty, his shirt stained with grease. Just another ordinary day. Then he heard an engine. Not the kind of engine sound from the old SUVs parents usually drove to the school, but a low, smooth, expensive sound. The kind of sound like a quiet growl from a wild animal. Jonah looked up. A black luxury sedan glided into the parking lot. Dark tinted windows, sleek chrome lines. Clearly, this car did not belong in this neighborhood, much less in this schoolyard. The door opened. Aubrey Hawthorne stepped out. A white-fitted suit, high heels clicking sharply on the concrete. Black sunglasses covering half her face. She didn't look around. She walked straight toward Jonah, as if this entire courtyard were her own stage. Parents went silent. Teachers turned to look. Every gaze was pulled toward her. Jonah stood up, wiping his hands on a dirty rag, leaving streaks of black oil on the fabric. "How can I help you?" Aubrey removed her sunglasses, her razor-sharp eyes locking onto his. "Mr. Whitlock, we need to talk." Jonah sighed, his voice edged with weariness. "If this is about money again—" "It's not." Her voice was firm. "It's about the truth." She took out her phone and turned the screen toward him. Security footage appeared, grainy, full of noise, with a timestamp. But the image was unmistakable. Jonah carrying her out of the burning car, his face smeared with dirt, but his eyes fierce. "You saved my life," Aubrey said, "and I haven't even thanked you properly." Jonah shrugged. "You thanked me by leaving. That was cold. So is turning kindness into a business transaction." The air between them grew heavy, tense, full of unsaid words. Aubrey glanced toward the playground behind him. Tessa was running around with her friends, sunlight shining on her golden hair. "That's your daughter. My whole world." Aubrey watched Tessa for a long moment. The hardness in her gaze softened. "She's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one." Aubrey stepped closer, her voice lower. "Jonah, I'm here to apologize and to make things right." "You don't owe me anything." "Maybe not, but I want to do this." She pulled an envelope from her bag and opened it. Inside were legal documents. Jonah immediately recognized the logo of the property management company that handled his rental. "What is this?" "I own the building you rent. As of yesterday, I bought it." Jonah's stomach tightened. "You did what?" "And as of this morning, your entire rent balance is paid. The house belongs to you, completely free." Jonah stepped back half a step. His head spun. "You think kindness is a debt to repay? I don't need this." "This isn't about debt." Her voice was serious, sincere. "It's about starting something better." "Better for who? Your conscience?" "Better for people like you," she replied, without blinking. "People who do the right thing and never get anything for it. You deserve more than that." "I already have what I need. I sleep well knowing I helped someone. That's enough." "Is it enough?" She gestured around the school grounds. "Working yourself to exhaustion, struggling to pay bills, sacrificing everything for your daughter. This is enough? Jonah, you deserve better." "I don't need to be saved. Everyone needs saving at some point." Her voice caught slightly. "Even me." Jonah stopped. In her eyes there was something, a tiny crack in the steel wall of a billionaire CEO. Pain, vulnerability. This story wasn't just about him. "What happened to you?" he asked. Aubrey looked into the distance. "I grew up poor, lived in a housing project. I had to climb alone. And somewhere along the way, I forgot what helplessness felt like." Until the accident. Until the accident. She gave a sad smile. You reminded me that money doesn't buy character. It doesn't buy courage. And it definitely doesn't buy the man who carried a stranger out of a fire. Jonah exhaled softly. The anger inside him dissolved. So what now? Her voice steadied. Now I do what I should have done from the start. She handed him another document. I'm starting a fund for single parents, especially single fathers. Financial support, job training, childcare? Jonah skimmed it. His eyes widened. The Whitlock Fund. I used your name. I hope that's okay. You named the fund after me? It represents the only kind of strength I truly respect. Quiet strength, honest strength, human strength. Jonah stared at the document. His name, Jonah Whitlock, printed boldly, tied to something bigger than himself. I don't know what to say. Say you'll work with me. Aubrey met his gaze. Say you'll help me find families who need support. You know this place better than I do. You want me to work with you? I want you to guide me, keep me grounded. Make sure this fund actually helps people, not my reputation. Jonah looked at Tessa. She was running around happily, unaware that her father's life was changing course. All those nights Jonah stayed awake worrying, rent, food, whether he was good enough. If I join, Jonah said slowly, we do this my way. No PR, no flashiness, just real help. Aubrey extended her hand. Agreed. Jonah shook it, her hand firm, warm, equal. Aubrey tilted her head, a playful smile appearing. Oh, one more thing. What? I still have your shirt. Jonah laughed, truly laughed. Keep it. You wear it better. A crowd had gathered around them, phones raised to record, whispers spreading through the schoolyard. A reporter squeezed in. Local paper here. Ms. Hawthorne, are you two dating? Aubrey glanced at Jonah. Her eyes sparkled as if hiding a secret. Not yet. But he did lend me his favorite shirt. Laughter rippled everywhere. Jonah shook his head, smiling helplessly. You are impossible. I prefer the term determined, she replied, lips curving. Tessa ran over, panting. Dad, that's the lady from TV. That's right, sweetheart. Tessa looked at Aubrey, her expression unusually serious. Are you going to help my dad? Aubrey crouched to eye level, her voice soft. I'll do my very best. Do you agree? Only if you're good to my dad, Tessa said firmly. My dad is the best dad in the world. Aubrey smiled. A real smile. I can see that, and I promise. Tessa suddenly hugged her. A simple hug, but it made Aubrey freeze. Then, slowly, she hugged back. When the girl ran off toward her friends, Aubrey stood up, her eyes slightly wet. She's wonderful, she whispered. She's the reason for everything I do, Jonah said. Aubrey nodded. Then let's make sure you don't have to struggle anymore. She turned and walked toward her car. At the door she paused, glanced back. I'll send the paperwork this week. And Jonah? What? Thank you for reminding me why I started this company. Why? To help the people who once helped me, when I had nothing. She stepped into the car, the door closing. The sedan glided away like a whisper. Jonah stood there, the documents in his hand, heart pounding. His life was really changing. That night, after Tessa went to sleep, Jonah sat alone in the dark living room. The envelope from Aubrey lay on the table. He hadn't opened it yet. Jonah reached out and touched the edge of the paper. His fingers trembled slightly, as if what was inside wasn't paperwork, but something that could change his entire life. And then the memories came back. Camille, his wife. Shimmering red hair, a warm smile, hands that always knew how to make the world feel lighter. She had died 3 years ago. Stage 4 breast cancer. A battle that was too long, too painful, He remembered the endless nights spent in the hospital, the constant beep, beep of the machines, the bitter smell of antiseptic burning in his throat. He remembered Camille's small hand in his, growing weaker day by day. On the final night, she looked at him, her voice barely a breath. "Jonah, don't let our daughter go without. Promise me. I promise. And don't close your heart. She deserves happiness. Camille, promise me." Tears streamed down his face. "I promise." She passed away at 3 in the morning. He held her cooling body, screaming into the darkness. Screamed until his voice went raw. Screamed until it felt like his heart was fracturing inside him. From that day on, Jonah threw himself into work like a man running from his own heart. 3 jobs at once. Fixing pipes, installing electrical wiring. Any job anyone hired him for, because he knew if he stopped, he would have to feel. And feeling meant pain. Only Tessa kept him standing each morning. Her laughter. The way she looked at him was like he was a superhero. But the truth? He was falling apart. His bank account had $247 left. Next month's rent, $1,200, not including electricity, water, and phone bills, not including food. Last week, Tessa asked, "Daddy, why don't we go eat pizza like before?" Jonah forced a smile. "Eating at home is healthier, sweetheart." But the truth? He couldn't afford it. And then Aubrey Hawthorne appeared, like someone had thrown a beam of light into his life. A light so bright he didn't know whether to believe it. A free house, a fund named after him, a chance to breathe. But deep inside, part of him was still afraid. Afraid that accepting help meant he was weak. Meant he had failed the promise he made to Camille. Finally, Jonah opened the envelope. Inside were the house ownership papers. His name was right at the top. Clear, formal, unmistakable. The house was his. No more rent. No more fear of eviction. No more storm clouds hanging over him at the end of every month. He bent forward and burst into tears. Not ordinary tears, but guttural sobs from the deepest part of his chest. The cries of a man who had held everything in for far too long. At that moment, the bedroom door opened softly. Tessa stood in the doorway, clutching her stuffed bear. "Daddy?" Jonah quickly wiped his face. "Sweetheart, why aren't you asleep? I heard you crying." She walked toward him, climbed onto the sofa, and curled into his arms, just like she had since she was tiny. "Are you sad because of Mom?" Jonah's tears returned, despite his efforts to hold them back. "Sometimes. I miss your mom very much." Tessa rested her head on his shoulder, whispering, "Mom would be proud of you. You're doing so good." Jonah swallowed hard. "You think so?" "I know so. You're the best dad ever. And now Ms. Aubrey is going to help us. Mom would like that." Jonah hugged her tightly, holding on to the only thing keeping him from collapsing into the abyss. "I love you, Tessa. I love you too." The two of them sat in that warm darkness for a long time, holding each other, breathing together, healing wounds that the eyes couldn't see, but the heart remembered forever. Meanwhile, in the highest penthouse in downtown Portland, Aubrey Hawthorne stood silently before the wide glass window. The city beneath her glowed like a galaxy, beautiful, magnificent, and cold to the point of cruelty. She held a glass of red wine in her hand, but didn't drink a single drop. On the table, Jonah's white shirt was neatly folded, clean. She had washed it herself, dried it, and kept it. Not because she forgot, but because she didn't want to return it. Aubrey lifted the shirt close to her face, the scent of cheap soap, the smell of hand-washing from real homes, real families. A single tear fell, sudden, without warning. For a moment, she was 12 again. Foster home number 7. Dinner was dry bread and water. She was so hungry that she stole an apple from the fridge. Mr. Smith, the balding man with the stench of alcohol, slapped her across the face. "Thief!" He whipped her 5 times across the back. The red welts burned like fire. Aubrey didn't cry. She learned how not to cry from that day onward. Age 14. A group home. The girls shoved her head into a locker, laughing. "You'll never be anything. A child nobody wants." Age 16. Aubrey gave up hope. She slashed her wrist in the bathroom, warm water mixed with red blood into a pale pink. A social worker found her and saved her. But no one asked, "Why are you hurting so much?" Age 18. She earned a full-ride scholarship, business major, studied 20 hours a day. No friends, no dating, no weakness, just one goal: never be looked down on again. Age 25. Aubrey became the youngest CEO in the company's history. Wealthy, powerful, standing at the top of the pyramid. She built herself a fortress made of money, achievements, and untouchability. But that fortress was very lonely. No one loved Aubrey for who she was. They loved her power, her bank account, the Hawthorne name behind her, until Jonah. He didn't know who she was, didn't know how wealthy she was. He saved her because it was the thing a person should do. He shoved money back into her hands because he had dignity money couldn't buy. For the first time in 20 years, someone looked at Aubrey Hawthorne and saw a human being. She hugged the shirt to her chest and cried, sobs from the deepest part of her soul. Painful, but the kind of pain that made her heart come alive again. Her phone vibrated, a message from her stepmother, Vivian Hawthorne. "I heard about your hero. Don't be foolish, Aubrey. Men like that only want your money. You're embarrassing the family." Aubrey stared at the venomous words, not angry, just tired. She deleted the message, then blocked the number. Vivian was not someone she needed. She never had. Right now, Aubrey thought only of Jonah, of Tessa, of that feeling of belonging, the feeling she had never experienced anywhere, with anyone. For the first time in her life, Aubrey Hawthorne realized she no longer wanted to return to that lonely fortress at the top. She wanted to move toward the small, worn house where that man lived, and where little Tessa smiled at her as if she had belonged there for a very, very long time. 1 month later, the Portland Convention Center glowed under bright lights. Press crowded the hallways. Cameras, reporters, and influencers stood in long rows. Today was the launch day of the Whitlock Fund. Jonah stood backstage, looking impossibly out of place in a suit. The tie tightened uncomfortably around his neck, his shoes polished so much that he could see his reflection in them. Everything made him want to step outside just to breathe. Tessa sat beside him, pretty in her dress, hair braided neatly, her legs swinging with excitement. "Daddy, are you famous now?" Jonah chuckled softly. "No, sweetheart, I'm just standing here." "But they named the fund after you." "That doesn't mean I'm famous. It just means I'm a little luckier." A production assistant rushed toward him, looking stressed. "Mr. Whitlock, you're on stage in 5 minutes." Jonah froze. "I thought I was just attending?" "Ms. Hawthorne wants you to speak. She didn't tell you?" Jonah inhaled sharply. "No, she definitely didn't." Tessa covered her mouth, giggling. "Dad's gonna be on TV." "Thank you for the perfectly timed announcement." The auditorium lights dimmed, music rose, the room fell silent. Aubrey stepped onto the stage, confident, sharp as ever, but her eyes tonight were softer than usual. With just a small nod, she took command of the packed room. "Good evening. Thank you all for being here." Her voice rang clear and strong. "Tonight, we launch something special, something deeply personal to me, the Whitlock Fund." Applause thundered through the hall. Camera flashes erupted. "This fund exists because of one man, a man who saved my life without asking for anything, a man who reminded me that true strength isn't measured by money, but by dignity." She turned toward the wings, her gaze landing directly on Jonah. "Jonah Whitlock, please join me on stage." His heart stopped for a beat. Tessa nudged him forward. "Go, Dad!" Jonah stepped out, his knees nearly buckling. Stage lights blazing so bright he felt like the entire world was watching his every step. The crowd rose to their feet, clapping thunderously. Aubrey handed him the microphone, whispering, "Say something." He looked at her as if to say, "You're really throwing me into this?" "You didn't warn me." "I wanted it to be real." She smiled slightly. "Speak from the heart." Jonah turned to face the audience. Hundreds of faces, hundreds of expectant eyes were waiting for him to speak. "I'm not good at speeches," he began, his voice hoarse and slightly shaky. "I'm just a repairman. I fix pipes, change light bulbs. That's what I do every day." He paused, took a deep breath, and continued with a steadier tone. "But being a single father has taught me one thing. You don't need money to be rich. You need people who believe in you. You need moments that remind you why you have to keep going." He glanced toward Aubrey, his eyes softening. "That stormy night, I didn't save Aubrey to be recognized. I saved her because it was the right thing to do. But somehow, that moment changed everything." He turned back to the audience. "She could have forgotten me, gone back to her busy life. But she didn't. She came back. She listened. She genuinely cared. That," he paused, "is rare." The entire room was silent, hanging on every word. "The Whitlock Fund isn't about me. This fund is for every parent trying their best each day. The dads are working 2 or 3 jobs. The moms stretch every dollar. The people who feel invisible." Jonah's voice grew stronger, more confident. "You are not invisible. You matter. And now you have support. Real support." The crowd rose to their feet. Applause exploded like fireworks. The auditorium shook. Jonah stepped back, overwhelmed by a feeling he had never experienced before. Aubrey stepped forward, took his hand, and squeezed gently. "Perfect," she whispered. After the event, Jonah and Aubrey stood in the quiet hallway behind the auditorium. The warm yellow lights reflected on the tiled floor, creating a strangely gentle atmosphere after all the noise. Nearby in the lobby, Tessa was fast asleep on a long sofa, her head resting on her tiny stuffed bear. Aubrey opened her bag and took out a small, elegant box. "I have something for you," she said, her voice soft but firm. Jonah shook his head. "You've given me enough." "Just open it." He lifted the lid. Inside was a pen engraved with the words, "For the man who doesn't sell kindness." Jonah felt his throat tighten. "You didn't have to do this." "I know." Aubrey stepped closer, close enough that only a breath separated them. "But I wanted to, because you deserve it." Her gaze softened. "You changed my life, Jonah." He gave a small, genuine smile. "You changed mine, too." They stood facing each other, close enough that one small step would bring them into contact. The air between them felt electric, tense and warm at the same time. Aubrey leaned in slightly and whispered, "I still have your shirt." "I know," he replied, the corner of his mouth lifting. "I saw you wearing it in that article last week." She let out a soft laugh, the gentlest sound he had ever heard from her. "It's my favorite shirt now." "Mine too," Jonah teased, "even though you're the one wearing it. Especially because I'm the one wearing it." Her smile this time was truly warm, free of the familiar guardedness of a powerful CEO. "You're full of surprises, Jonah." He looked into her eyes. "So are you, Aubrey." Behind them came a clear throat-clearing sound. The event photographer. "Sorry. May I get a photo for the website?" They stood side by side, professional, composed, but their hands brushed lightly at the hem of her jacket. Neither pulled away. Flash. The moment was captured. A moment neither of them expected. A moment that marked the beginning of something real, warm, and very possibly destined. 1 year passed gently, like a dream. Jonah stood inside his small repair shop. The sign hanging at the door read clearly, Whitlock Mechanics, in partnership with the Whitlock Fund. He wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag. This was his shop, small, simple, but tidy and warm. Every corner was the result of years of relentless hard work. The doorbell chimed. Aubrey walked in. She wore the white shirt, his shirt, paired with jeans, and her hair falling softly around her shoulders. She looked both relaxed and so stunning that he momentarily lost his words. "Still fits," she said, a faint smile on her lips. Jonah chuckled. "You still enjoy stealing my clothes." "Borrowing," she corrected, her eyes glimmering with playfulness. "Right, of course." Aubrey walked around the shop, gently touching the toolkit, the drill, and each item he kept with such care. "This place is perfect," she said with certainty. "It's small, but it's honest, like you." At that moment, Tessa ran in from the back door, her 2 braids bouncing with each step. "Aubrey, I got the STEM scholarship. Full ride?" Aubrey's face lit up. "You're amazing. I'm so proud of you." Tessa hugged her tightly. Jonah watched them, his daughter, the woman in front of him. A feeling of family settled deep in his chest, warm in a way that was hard to describe. Tessa ran back to finish her homework. The shop grew quiet again. Aubrey turned back to Jonah, not with the look of a powerful CEO, but with the gaze of a woman carrying her whole heart in her hands. "I have something for you," she said. Jonah raised a brow. "Another gift?" "Open it tomorrow," she said softly. "Promise?" She handed him a cream-colored envelope, sealed carefully. "What's inside?" Jonah asked, his heartbeat beginning to quicken. "A question I'm afraid to ask." "Afraid?" His voice softened. "Terrified." She gave a fragile smile, then gently brushed her fingers against his cheek. "You make me feel things I thought I had buried." "Like what?" "Like I'm home." Jonah pulled her closer. "You are home." They kissed. Gentle, deep. A year of friendship blooming into love. She stepped back, smiling. "Open it tomorrow." "Why not now?" "Because I want you to truly think about it." She left. Jonah stood alone, the envelope warm in his hand. That night, Jonah tossed and turned, unable to sleep. The envelope lay on the nightstand like a challenge, silently staring at him, waiting for him to open it. Finally, he reached for it and lifted it. His fingers trembled slightly. In his mind, a familiar voice whispered, the voice of Camille. "Don't close your heart, Jonah. You deserve happiness." But was he allowed? Allowed to love again? Allowed to move on? To let the past rest? A tear fell. Then another. For the first time in many months, he allowed himself to feel pain and hope. Jonah opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten card, Aubrey's lettering sharp and neat, yet with a faint tremble, as though she had written it with her whole heart. "Jonah, you saved my life in the storm, but you did more than that. You saved me from becoming the person I hated. You reminded me that kindness is the strongest currency, that honor matters more than wealth, that love is built on respect, not transaction. I'm not asking because I owe you. I'm asking because I cannot imagine life without you, without Tessa, without the man who shoved my money back at me and taught me what dignity truly is. Will you marry me? A." The second page was a printed invitation. The wedding of Aubrey Hawthorne and Jonah Whitlock. Jonah's hands shook violently. Tears fell as naturally as breathing. He laughed and cried at the same time, feeling his heart clench, but in a way that was sweet beyond belief. Tessa appeared in the doorway, clutching her stuffed bear, eyes still sleepy. "Daddy," Why are you crying? Jonah wiped his tears, but the smile on his face couldn't be hidden. Because something impossible just became possible, sweetheart. Is Ms. Aubrey going to be my mom? He lifted his daughter and spun her gently. Do you want her to be? More than anything. Then yes, he whispered. She's going to be your mom. Tessa squealed with excitement and hugged his neck tightly. The two of them danced around the kitchen, their laughter filling the small house like sunlight pouring through every window. Their lives were about to change again. But this time, it was right. It was beautiful. And it was built on love. The kind of love both of them thought they would never find again. But happiness, like always, never came easily. The next morning, Jonah's phone buzzed nonstop. Messages, calls, and emails poured in all at once. He opened social media, and it felt like someone punched him straight in the chest. The biggest headline on the news feed: CEO Hawthorne buys her hero? Romance scandal or PR stunt? A photo of Jonah and Aubrey together at the event had been taken from the worst angle possible. Below the image were rows of vicious headlines. She bought him a house. He saved her. How convenient. From plumber to CEO's fiancé, fairy tale or brand-boosting scheme? Insider source: Whitlock exploited the accident to get paid. Jonah's stomach twisted. He scrolled down to the comments, and things got even worse. Obviously, he's after her money. She bought him. Simple. Why do rich women always end up with losers? Each word sank into his chest like a cold blade. His phone rang. Aubrey's name appeared. Jonah answered. Jonah, did you see it? I saw. I'm sorry. I'll take care of it. No. His voice suddenly hardened, cold as steel. I'll handle it myself. He hung up before she could say anything else. At school, things were even worse. Tessa ran home in tears, her face red from humiliation. They said Daddy is a freeloader. Said Miss Aubrey paid you to... She choked. Each word came out like it was being carved from her throat. Jonah pulled her close to his chest. His body trembled slightly with anger and helplessness. Don't listen to them, sweetheart. I didn't sell my soul. But that night, after Tessa fell asleep, Jonah lay awake in the dark. A storm of doubt tore through him, ripping at the seams of his heart. Was he living off someone's pity? Was he taking advantage of her without realizing it? Would Camille be disappointed in him? Those questions pressed on his chest like a stone. For the first time since meeting Aubrey, Jonah felt like he might lose everything. The next day, Aubrey called. Jonah, I need you to come to my place, tonight. Why? My family wants to meet you. Jonah's heart sank. Aubrey, please. For me, the Hawthorne estate. It was so large it looked more like a 5-star hotel than a private home. Tall iron gates, a lawn as big as a golf course, house staff moving with the precision of a trained unit. Jonah stood at the door in the only suit he owned. In that moment, he felt like someone who had been placed in the wrong world entirely. Aubrey opened the door for him, a sharp black suit, her hair in a neat bun, the familiar cold CEO expression on her face, but her eyes full of fear. Inside, the dining room was so long that voices echoed back. The table could seat 20 people. At the head sat Vivian Hawthorne, Aubrey's stepmother, 60 years old, perfectly silver hair, diamonds glittering on her neck and wrists, her gaze so cold it could freeze the room itself. Beside her was Derek Hawthorne, the half-brother, 40, an Armani suit, a plastic smile glued to his face. The moment Jonah stepped inside, they looked at him as if he were a stain on the marble floor. Sit down, Mr. Whitlock. Vivian's voice was sharp as a blade. Jonah sat. Aubrey sat beside him, her hand gripping his tightly under the table as if to steady herself. And him. Vivian took a sip of champagne and set her glass down. So, You're the hero. I just did what anyone should do. Right. And now you have a free house, a foundation named after you, and you're about to marry the richest woman in Oregon. She let out a mocking laugh. Very convenient. Mother, Aubrey warned. Be quiet, Aubrey. I'm talking. Vivian leaned toward Jonah. What do you want? Money? I can write a check right now. How much for you to disappear from her life? Jonah stood up. I don't want your money. Everyone has a price. Not me. Derek chuckled. Oh, he plays the role well. The noble man. Jonah turned to him. I'm not acting. Sure. It's just a coincidence you saved my sister, right when she needed someone to touch her feelings, right? Derek, that's enough. Aubrey shot up from her seat. No. Vivian slammed her champagne glass onto the table. You need to wake up, Aubrey. Marrying a plumber? You're disgracing the Hawthorne name. Jonah turned to head for the door. But then he heard Aubrey's voice, calm, cold as steel. Mother is right. Jonah froze. Aubrey took a breath, then continued. Jonah has no money, no status, no power. His heart cracked. But she wasn't finished. But he has something no one in this family has. Dignity, honor, and the ability to love me as a human being, not my bank account. The room fell dead silent. Aubrey walked up to her stepmother. You want the truth? Jonah is the only man who has ever looked at me and seen my real worth. Not the CEO, not the billionaire. Aubrey. A person. Her voice trembled, but her resolve held firm. For the first time in my life, I feel enough. Not because of what I own, but because of who I am. She turned to Jonah. And if Mother cannot accept that, then I'll leave this family, because I chose him. And I will always choose him. Silence. Vivian stared at her daughter like she were a stranger. So, you're serious? More serious than ever. Vivian shot to her feet. Then you're a fool. She stormed out. Derek gave her one last contemptuous look. You'll regret this, Aubrey. The door slammed shut, shaking the walls. Aubrey collapsed onto a chair, her whole body trembling. Jonah immediately knelt beside her. You didn't have to do that, he whispered. Yes, I did. She looked at him, eyes red. They don't define me. You do. He pulled her into his arms. You're incredibly brave. I'm terrified. So am I. In that massive, cold, empty house, they held each other. Just the two of them. And for them, that was enough. The following week, everything got worse. The press kept tearing them apart without mercy. Hawthorne abandons her family for a plumber. A love soaked in PR? Did she save him, or did he save her wallet? The company's stock dropped. The board of directors held an emergency meeting. Aubrey worked nearly 20 hours a day just to keep her entire empire from collapsing. And Jonah? He only saw himself as a burden. That night, heavy rain, just like the night they met. Jonah quietly packed clothes, tools, a few of Tessa's toys. Tessa ran in, eyes wide with fear. Dad, what are you doing? We're leaving, sweetheart. Leaving where? Somewhere else, starting over. What about Aubrey? Jonah couldn't bring himself to look at his daughter. She will be better off without us. Tessa froze. Then her voice trembled. I don't believe you. For the first time in her life, she yelled at him. You're giving up, just like you gave up on Mom. Jonah went still, like someone had stabbed him in the chest. Mom died because she was sick, not because of me, Tessa sobbed. But Mom told me before she died. She said, don't let Daddy close his heart. There are still good things in life. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Aubrey, is that a good thing? Dad, and you're closing your heart. Jonah dropped to his knees, pulling his daughter into a tight embrace. Both of them cried until it hurt. "You're right," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Tessa hugged him even tighter. "Then don't go. Fight for her, like a real hero." Jonah kissed her forehead. "I promise." Past midnight. Jonah drove to Aubrey's penthouse. He knocked. No answer. He used the spare key she had given him last month. Inside was dark, cold. Aubrey sat on the floor, back against the wall, eyes red and swollen. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. "Aubrey?" She looked up, voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" "Returning to the house." "No." Jonah sat beside her. "I came to apologize." "Apologize for what?" "For planning to leave you." Fresh tears slid down her face. "I knew it. Everyone leaves." "You don't understand." "I do," she screamed, completely losing control for the first time. "Everyone I ever loved left me. My biological parents dumped me into the system. My foster families beat me. My stepmother only wants my inheritance. And now you, the only person who ever made me feel loved." Her voice broke. Aubrey collapsed, burying her face in Jonah's shoulder, sobbing like she had held it in her whole life. Jonah held her so tightly, it was as if he could shield her from every pain she carried. "Listen to me," he whispered gently. "Listen very carefully." He lifted her face, wiping her tears. "I'm not going anywhere. I was just scared. I thought I was dragging you down. But my daughter reminded me of what Camille said before she died." Aubrey whispered, "What did she say?" "Don't close your heart. Life still has so many good things." Jonah smiled through his own tears. "And you are that good thing, Aubrey. You're the reason I believe I can love again." Aubrey exhaled shakily, her trembling hand gripping his. "Are you sure? Because I can't lose you." "You won't lose me. Not ever." They kissed, deep, desperate, but healing. When they pulled apart, Aubrey whispered, "I still need an answer." "An answer?" "The letter I wrote." Jonah laughed softly, like breathing. "Yes." She blinked. "Yes?" "A million times yes. I'll marry you, Aubrey." Aubrey burst into tears again, but this time they were tears of joy. "I love you." "I love you too." They sat leaning into each other on the floor, under the faint glow of the city lights, until dawn broke. Two souls once shattered, now found each other. The next morning, Aubrey called a press conference. All the major news outlets were present. Cameras flashed brightly. Microphones crowded the table. The atmosphere was so tense you could practically hear each person's heartbeat. Aubrey stepped up to the podium, standing firm, exactly like the CEO the whole world had seen her be. But right beside her, Jonah stood, calm but a little awkward. And behind them, Tessa, in her cute pink dress, looking up with pure pride. "Thank you all for coming," Aubrey began. "Today, I have an announcement." Camera flashes exploded immediately. "This past week, the media has raised many questions about my relationship," she said, her voice steady but slow. "They say I bought Jonah Whitlock. They call this a scandal." Aubrey reached out and took Jonah's hand, a simple but powerful gesture. "The truth is this. Jonah saved my life. Not just once. He pulled me out of a burning car during the storm, and then saved me again from a cold, lonely life where money was the only measure of worth." Her voice caught for a brief moment, but her gaze remained unwavering. "He taught me that kindness cannot be bought, that love is not a transaction, and that family is where people love you for who you are." Aubrey turned to Jonah. Then, in front of the entire press, she slowly knelt down. The whole room seemed to stop breathing. A few people gasped and covered their mouths. Jonah froze, his heart dropping out of his chest. "Jonah Whitlock," Aubrey said, her voice trembling slightly but full of certainty. "You made me believe in love. You made me believe I deserved to be loved. So, will you marry me? Jonah let out a laugh choked with tears. You already asked? Aubrey smiled. Then answer me in front of everyone. Jonah nodded, tears glistening under the bright camera lights. Yes, 1,000,000 times. Yes. Aubrey stood. Jonah pulled her into his arms and they kissed. A kiss that spoke all the words they had never dared to say. The crowd erupted into applause. Microphones shook with reporters shouting, "What about your family? They disapprove. What do you say about that?" Aubrey turned back, her gaze sharp but serene. My family, she said firmly, is Jonah and Tessa. The rest is just blood relations. Do you regret it? Another reporter asked. Aubrey smiled, soft but resolute. Never. A small chapel. Warm. Intimate. Only the people who truly mattered. No extravagance, no fireworks, no red carpet. Just exactly them. Simple, sincere, and complete. Tessa stood in the center in a pure white dress, her braided hair adorned with tiny flowers. Her little hands rested in the hands of Jonah and Aubrey, as if she herself were the thread binding the three of them together. Judge Merrick, 65 years old, gentle, with a kind, benevolent face, smiled as he looked at them. Do you, Jonah, take Aubrey? Yes, Jonah answered immediately, not waiting for him to finish. You don't need to hear the rest. I do. The whole chapel burst into laughter. Aubrey looked at him, both moved and excited. I've waited long enough for this moment. Judge Merrick shook his head, chuckling. All right, Aubrey, do you? Yes, forever. Aubrey replied without a single hesitation. Then by the power vested in me. But he didn't even get to finish before they kissed. An early, slightly awkward kiss, but so beautiful it made hearts ache. No one complained, no one stopped them, because clearly they had waited for this for a very long time. At the small reception afterwards, Jonah handed Aubrey a wooden box. What is this? She asked. A key. A key to what? My truck. The truck from that night. I restored it myself. And now it's yours. Aubrey looked down at the old key, the very thing she thought Jonah had thrown away long ago. Tears fell instantly. You kept it? Her voice trembled. Jonah smiled. Some things are worth keeping, like us. She placed her hand on his chest. Especially us. They danced. Aubrey rested her head on Jonah's shoulder. Tessa ran over and hugged both their waists, and the three of them swayed together to the soft music filling the room. Aubrey whispered, Sometimes kindness saves one life. Jonah replied, voice deep and warm. Sometimes it saves two. Tessa chimed in, her laughter ringing bright. Sometimes three. They held each other as the sun set, warm orange light washing over the three of them like the universe's blessing. 5 years passed like a long dream. Jonah now ran the Whitlock mechanics chain with 5 branches across Oregon. Each shop hired single parents, people who needed a second chance to stand back up. Aubrey resigned as CEO, dedicating all her time to operating the Whitlock Foundation. The foundation now supported more than 5,000 families each year. Tessa, 12 years old, stood on stage receiving a National Science Award. In her speech, her voice rang with confidence, far more mature than her age. I learned from my dad that dignity has no price. I learned from Mom Aubrey that courage is knowing you're vulnerable, but choosing to fight anyway. The entire hall erupted in thunderous applause. After the ceremony, the three of them sat inside the old truck. The truck Jonah had carefully restored, still carrying the soul of that stormy night years ago. Tessa asked curiously, Why don't we buy a new car, Dad? Jonah laughed, patting the steering wheel. Because this one has memories, sweetheart. Aubrey placed her hand gently over his. That's right. The night you saved me. This was the truck that took me home. Tessa tilted her head. Home? You mean Grandma's house? Aubrey looked at Jonah, her eyes warm and glistening. No, honey. Home, as in where your dad is, where I first felt accepted. They drove through Portland under the sunset. The city sparkled, as if blessing everything they had been through. Jonah asked, half teasing, half serious, "Do you regret it? Leaving an entire empire for me?" Aubrey laughed. "Are you kidding? I have everything. You, Tessa, a family. But you used to have an empire. An empire that was cold. This family is what's warm." From the back seat, Tessa chimed in, "You two are so sweet, it's ridiculous." They burst into laughter. The truck stopped at the park, the same place where, during the hardest days, Jonah could only bring Tessa because he couldn't afford anything else. The three of them sat down on the grass. Tessa chased butterflies, her laughter floating through the breeze. Aubrey rested her head on Jonah's shoulder. "Can you believe it? How did everything begin?" "From a storm. From an accident. I thought I was just helping a stranger on the road. But you saved me. You saved me too. From a life of surviving, not living." Aubrey lifted his face and kissed him softly. "We saved each other." Tessa ran back, holding a bunch of wildflowers. "For Mom." Aubrey accepted them, eyes turning misty. "Thank you, Angel. I love you, Mom. I love you too." The three of them lay on the grass, watching the clouds drift slowly. The wind carried the scent of a peace they had fought hard to earn. Jonah said quietly, "Camille would have loved you." Aubrey blinked. "You really think so?" "Absolutely. She always wanted Tessa to have a mother who loved her." Aubrey swallowed a lump in her throat. "I'm trying my best." "You're doing an amazing job." Tessa hugged them from behind, her voice bright as sunlight. "You know what? I'm the luckiest kid in the world." "Why do you say that?" Jonah asked. "Because I have two moms who love me. One mom in heaven, and one mom who's hugging me right now." Aubrey couldn't hold back. She pulled Tessa into a tight embrace. "You're too smart for your own good, little Tessa." They sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, as the first star appeared in the sky. If you've watched until this moment, thank you from the bottom of my heart. The stories I tell always center on kindness, healing, and the small miracles of life. If you want to hear more journeys like this, stories that make us believe in love, in kindness, and in people, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a comment. Which part of today's story touched you the most? See you in the next story. Thank you for being here.